Thanks for the thumbs up there, Umar. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this podcast, which is one of a series of podcasts which we've done here now at Guidance Hub. First one that I've done, actually, but on the subject being what it takes to be a Muslim in the 21st century. We're all Muslims here, alhamdulillah, and we're here in the 21st century, so I think that qualifies us to talk on the subject matter. For those of you at home who perhaps didn't catch, I think on Guidance Hub's Instagram page, we had a little survey today, right? And we asked people for questions for, on this subject, if there's anything that they would like us to talk about. And so we've had some really interesting replies. So if you didn't get a chance to do that, don't post them on there now, but just go underneath here in the comments, just put in a question or comments as you've got as we're having a bit of a chat. And the boys will feed them back to us, and we'll try and bring them into the conversation as we can. And don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Is there anything else you can do on YouTube? Smile. Yeah. Well, we'll try and do that. You can do it at home as well, inshallah. So we've got Shaykh Waseem here, of course, from Guidance Hub here, one of our resident scholars at the centre. Ustadh Hamdani, thank you for joining us. And we've got Brother Khurram, who is here with us today as well. So let's get straight into it, Shaykh, right? So what does it take to be a Muslim in the 21st century? So some of the things that we've had people come back to us from the questions, the request for questions that we asked, was one of the big subjects was the kind of pressure from parents, right? And trying to balance that with our religious obligations and responsibilities in this kind of current climate, which can be difficult, right? And I'm sure you've had people, students, friends confide in you and talk to you along that. What do you think of that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. I hope everyone's well. Thank you, Khizr, for hosting today's podcast. Thank you to our guest, Ustadh Hamdani, for the Khurram. We might have somebody else pop in as well and say a few words. Alhamdulillah, it's good to be back in action. Alhamdulillah. And a really important topic, I think, something that affects everybody, these kind of questions and challenges, because everyone's going through their own, particular life and circumstances and situations. And, it's hard to, give answers, but at least a conversation in the right direction can help everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to start because parents, children, it doesn't matter what age you are really, it's a big relationship, and there is this element of maybe culture that parents or we even think is part of Islam, but it's actually a cultural thing. And then of course when you're learning your Islamic values and practices and you want to do certain things certain ways, and sometimes it can be that, why being like that for, it's going to look bad on our family, and keeping up with the neighbors, the Joneses, as they say. So I think that is a good point to start. I think maybe a few people did mention that on the responses on the kind of poll or survey. So where I'd start from is, the reason why it comes about in the first place is because of a lack of knowledge and awareness of Islamic values and teachings. And one person, sometimes it's the other way around. Some of the parents want the children to do something, and the children don't realize it's Islamic, is good because of maybe the values we've picked up in our society, British Muslim values or whatever that is now. Something that we talk about. What are we here in Britain as Muslims, and what cultural practices and values we're picking up now? So it's I think it works both ways, because I think people sent in the parents one, like the parents tell us, and Islam says it, but I think it sometimes can work the other way as well. I think it starts off from knowing what is correct in Islam, what is truth, what is wrong, what is against our values and teachings, and then obviously practicing that, or at least educating the other party first in a wise way. You don't preach to your parents, you don't say to you don't throw religion at your parents like you don't know, I know, and this, we always say that in our classes, by the way. We always say, be wise how you bring people towards more sort of awareness of the religion and practice of Islam in your daily lives. It doesn't happen overnight. We didn't sit here overnight and decide to do this. This is probably the work of many years. Yourselves, you've studied, mashallah, Khurram studied in our courses. So yes, I think that for me, it comes down to awareness and education, and that often is the education most of us have is from our families, as we brought up, parents, teachers, and so forth. And it's good because that does contain a lot of good. It's not all bad or all wrong. but because it may not have a scholarly or formal education, or Islamic education is not involved for a lot of us.
Yeah.
A lot of superstitions can creep in, a lot of misunderstandings, cultural practices from, and it's not, people might be thinking subcontinent, but things are from cultures in Africa, from Central Asia, from other parts of the world as well, where Muslims live. And we're living here. We brought our cultures over. Everyone's slightly different. The practices, things they do. A lot of it's compatible with Islam. We've got to accept it. Nothing wrong with it. Some clothing and things we do at home and stuff.
Pink socks are allowed.
We were discussing his pink socks earlier and saying that a bit of controversy in the studio before. But alhamdulillah, as you can see, they're still on, so he's got them there, mashallah. So I'm maybe bringing
so Ustadh, so we mentioned culture there, and probably a little bit negatively, right? But there's good parts of culture as well that we can bring into the way we practice our religion.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to all the viewers firstly, and to all the guys present here. Definitely Shaykh's mentioned some very useful things, and I think some of our people who were commenting, and they were mentioning this thing about culture. Now, when it comes to culture, even like scholars who are strict, they would even say that, look, there's certain things which part of the culture is fine as long as they don't contradict to Islam. Now, someone can like become really anti about this and say, you know what, I will just strictly follow Islam. And no, culture is a bit odd, because Islam is not just going to be found in a random place. It's always going to be within a culture. And when those cultural aspects are permissible, then there's no reason. So we have to obviously allow them to some extent. But if there's something wrong in the culture, then yeah, definitely if Islam is speaking against it, then we have to be careful. But there's so many things, like even at weddings, I mean, there's so many wrong things, but I've known scholars who have been like okay with things as long as they don't go against the culture. It's fine. Islam is ready to accept that. And obviously when we come into the 21st century, it's just a completely different thing. And obviously Islam is changing, and the way people are looking at Islam and practicing, and I mean, the more you travel, the more people you meet, you'll just be amazed. And what I feel, I don't know if Shaykh would agree with me, as scholars, sometimes it's very difficult to put ourselves in the people's shoes. I personally feel that, for certain things, like let's say people have been questioning about namaz at work. Yeah, it's hard for us to pray our salahs and stuff at work. Now, me being an imam of a masjid or something, it's very difficult. I would say, you know what, you have to make sure you pray on time. But it's hard for us to put ourselves in those guys' shoes and actually understand the kind of difficulties they're going through.
I think that's a good point to bring. What I mean, like,
you
pray at work.
I'm not a scholar, so
and you have to deal with non-Muslims in your workplace, and they know you have a break for prayer, I'm supposing, right?
Yeah. So I think to answer the question of what does it take to be a Muslim in the 21st century, we need to realize that we live in the age of over-information. So our parents, grandparents, they would have to ask someone who was knowledgeable or read a book maybe. We have knowledge in the palm of our hands and think we know everything. But the culture clashes with that, because parents will tell you to do things a certain way, and we have discovered that might be the wrong way to do things. And then it's difficult to convince parents or siblings to change that. But with that over information, it can lead to being lost in the religion a little bit as well. And I think just because you're born a Muslim, you still have to find your religion. And that you can see so many things on Instagram and Google, and just don't know where to start. And that's why you brushed on structured education is very important, I think. But if someone is asking that question, and Ustadh just touched on it, you would have to speak to people who are involved in these kind of places of work. And it is helpful, of course, to speak to scholars. But as you said, that you're not involved in it day to day. So if you speak to fellow Muslims in the workplace, then that would always help. Where do they pray? How do they pray? How do they speak to management about getting breaks, and whether they have to make up the time and things like that? So it's a very difficult balancing act, because we have a lot of information. There's all sorts out there, but we can't take it all on at the same time as well. So it needs structure.
I think that's a good point. And Kuran makes a good point there about have we got too much information in this day and age, right? Maybe we're asking too many questions. I've heard one of the teachers from our circle say, don't ask too many questions, keep your road nice and wide. The more questions you ask, the narrower, your limits of what you should or shouldn't be doing,
actually,
right? Because people who perhaps live in parts of the world where they don't have easy access to Islamic scholars and things like that, they've got to apply the basics of what they know to the various situations they find themselves in. We need an answer for everything. So I WhatsApp you about everything, Shaykh Waseem, right? And you probably get annoyed by me by some of the questions I ask, right? But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just keep it simple, just figure out an answer for myself, and then just get stuck in.
I think what Ustadh touched on, he mentioned like the culture, the parents, and the where they would get the answers from, and speak to the local imam, or they would have to try a bit harder. And I think what that did, and what I'm my own experiences, it made them forge their own Islamic identity. So when Islam came to, let's say, Central Asia, Persia, and then to the subcontinent, or went down to Africa or whatever, those people were non-Muslims. Those people were embracing Islam, but they weren't ditching who they were in their clothing and everything. They were adapting. So they had to obviously ditch some things, like Ustadh said, something that are not compatible. They have to just be left out. But what was there was kept. Now, we had an event about 6 months ago, I think. I can't remember. It's a bit of a blur because I had an injury and I'm recovering. But I think it's about 6 months ago, before Ramadan. And it was about Abdullah Quilliam, Shaykh al-Islam, the great scholar, the great Da'iyah, called to Islam in Liverpool, and he did a lot of great work. It was about his poetry. But what I learned from that event, and it was amazing because I saw something that I hadn't actually thought of or realized before, was the thing I mentioned earlier, this British Muslim identity. Because if you think about it, there's a Pakistani Muslim, there's an Indian Muslim, there's a Bangladeshi Muslim, there's a Somalian Muslim, there's a Jordanian Muslim. They were in their lands and countries, and countries obviously formed afterwards, but they were there, and they were just being Muslim in their own culture. And and the scholars were the ones teaching them. They were being given da'wah, they were being given guidance, and it took it was transitional phases they went through to form their identities. Now we've come from those countries, we've come here, and we've kind of brought those whole packages along, if you like. And they're not refined yet, maybe still. But there's also one being developed here in the UK, which is the British one, which is converts to Islam that were here a long time ago. And they were establishing masajid, they were, praying, they were fasting, they were learning the deen of Islam. Abdullah Quilliam went to the Ottoman Empire, he studied there, he spent time there, he came back, so, and there was others as well. So I think what we need to do, and I think it will help a lot for everybody, born Muslims, converts to Islam, children whose parents are converts and finding their own identity and space in society, is to kind of say, right, we're living in Britain, this is the culture around us, let's be a part of what we can be a part of, and what we can't, we need to learn to stay, well, that's not from our values. That's something we've got to, avoid or step aside from with dignity, with respect, with, some decorum, and not make it this kind of polarize ourselves from the rest of the community and make ourselves look what is now deemed negative, religious, or fanatical, or whatever the words are used, extremist, these kind of things. So I think that we're in a struggle phase, or in a transitional phase, where again I would go back to my point, is education, is that and practice. You learn and you practice, you learn and you practice. The practice actually comes not from the teacher. That's where I think Huram's point is very relevant. You have to go out and speak to other people. How did you get to where you are? What's your journey? And I think that's maybe something we should talk about more here, and bring people who've like yourself, I suppose. Okay, so to you, your journey. How how has it been for you? You the question for you, has it been a struggle here in the United Kingdom practicing your faith, and how do you?
I think it's an interesting question. I think generally I haven't found it that much of a struggle, to be honest with you, in that I think we've got open access to religion here in the UK, whereas you could go to some quote unquote Muslim countries and actually they restrict access to religion in many ways, right? You can only get one particular narrative, you can only get one particular flavor of Islam, or however you want to put it, and that's the one. You like it or leave it, take it or leave it, sort of thing. Whereas here, we've got you've got a mosque on every corner, right? All different spectrums, parts.
I mean, that was one of the I think questions, comments, that some people don't live close to masajid. Actually, we do. We're lucky in a sense. Most of us, if not all of us, we have a local masjid, or we can go to several, not too far away. But some people do live, quite a distance from a masjid.
Yes.
But carry on, Bismillah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and of course we sympathize with those people. It's
Yeah.
difficult, right? And I think we were saying as well, there's probably people in this area or people in areas, parts of the UK that live very close to mosques, but feel very distant from them as well, right? So I think geography is only one part of the whole jigsaw. But yeah, alhamdulillah, I think we've got, I mean, when I was younger, I think perhaps things were a bit more difficult. We didn't have places like guidance hub. You had the old school, you get the religion at the end of a stick, right? That was, there was no carrot, it was all stick. That was the way that you got it.
And then just to mention that was the times, you know, it wasn't just Islam or Muslims, let's say, doing that. It was the whole system. The cane was part of the system. Now we've all gone away from that and everybody stopped it. Or, you know, we're trying to hopefully stop it all.
Exactly.
But that was the culture, if you like. Islam doesn't say get the cane out. You know, the UK government had laws that allowed it, but they changed it. And I think that, you know, whatever discipline is required at a particular time and place. But of course, you know, Islam has always said you're not allowed to physically harm somebody in discipline. So if there was a strike, it should never be to harm, to make a bruise, to leave anything behind. But that's actually a good one, just that clash, if you like, of the struggle that we went through. That struggle, the people today, the young people, they will never know that struggle. You know, they've not been through that, so they grow up in maybe a more sensitive way, or you know, maybe I don't want to sound like too harsh, but maybe less resilient to certain things in life. Because honestly, it did give us, you know, whether you got the beats or you saw them, it gave you that, you know, this is
character building.
Exactly.
It was character building.
Again, if you look back, and Islam doesn't say some of that what we saw was okay or anything. It doesn't. Unfortunately, it happened in the mosque or with the imam or so on forth. But it was a cultural thing that you just used force in those circumstances, and now it's not. And alhamdulillah, all, you know, madaris, or, you know, after school madrasas are customizing themselves. I think, you know, we've had our safeguarding training from the Manchester City Council. I think a lot of the institutions are, you know, educating their teachers. But it's just, I thought I'd mention that's the point, that, you know, there's so many things that have changed as well. And you know, where we were maybe 20, 30, our parents were when they came here, and they didn't have masajid. You know, think about that. We're talking about masjids as they're around the corner, but your dad could tell you, you know, there was no masjid in Cheetham Hill when I arrived here, you know, or there was that little one there. It was a house, and we used to gather there and squeeze in. And Eid, we had to get a hole or something, and then all of a sudden we thought, let's build a masjid. So it's been, you know, a challenge, but we've moved into the 21st century where it's what Khuram said, technology and those kind of things. So yeah, it's just a kind of big world, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it is. It'll be interesting to see how this journey goes forward, because I mean, Ustadh, you can tell us perhaps a bit about the way that Islamic education has been structured now in this country. We talked about how before it was very old school, but it's changing now, right?
Alhamdulillah, many things are changing. Just one thing from what Shaykh said about the hitting and stuff like this going on. You know what? It was just not in it. It wasn't just in Islam. Because if you see like some of the schools, there was that some beating thing going on. Like it was not, but that's obviously completely gone now. So
they were throwing blackboard erasers at people, right?
There was some sort of physical punishment. Now it's still arguable whether it was good or not, but I think, you know, sometimes you just feel like, you know, the young generation, the young lads, and so they probably need some sort of beating or telling off. And I think if they've just gone like too laid back, there's problems to it. Discipline,
How you
and
do that is,
how you achieve it is obviously just depends on the individual. But I think that's very important, that the parents do need to discipline their child. And obviously some of the things that we see in our society, in our streets, maybe because of that leniency that the parents have given. And sometimes it's just the parents have given it, and sometimes the parents have just not been there for the children. So because of this fast-paced and moving world, and the parents have not been able to give that child that upbringing and that time. Forget the upbringing; they've not even been able to give time.
I think that was a comment, or you know, somebody mentioned in that, you know, balancing the work life with your religious life. So you spend so many hours at work that, you know, when you come home, you're tired, you know, you got a family, you got to pray, you got to do all these religious duties, and then you want to live a normal life outside of work and, you know, ritual worship kind of thing. You just want to have a relaxation thing. And it is, I think, because let's be real, right? We're living in a crisis, as it's being called. You know, the bills are going up, the inflation's there, you know, our cost of shopping is going up. And, you know, I was watching a video, and it was interesting the way that he explained it. He said, your money, what you mean, and it's a really good way of explaining it. It goes, currently you could probably get from your monthly wage 100 shops, but due to the inflation, you probably only can get 90 now. So you've lost 10% of your
Yeah.
wealth. You know,
Yeah.
the power of your wealth has
Yeah.
decreased, and that's going to be, you're going to see that in your shopping guide. You know, that's the example he gave, which means real cutbacks and stuff.
Yeah.
And that adds to this whole kind of discussion today about work, and people are struggling, and you know, we never thought we'd be talking about this kind of stuff in this welfare state, and where all this money is being thrown about. I think they're holding on to it a lot more. Well, they threw it around in COVID, and then they stopped, and I think we all want it again.
We're all paying for it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, does the religion offer any advice on that? Right? How do we balance our time? How should a modern British Muslim kind of divide their time out? Right?
You know, what I mentioned it earlier. We actually mentioned it before the podcast as well. How, you know, we talk about, like, we could talk about lady stuff here today, you know, female channel, but we're not females. We're not been through what they've been through, and you know, Said Hamdani as well. Allah bless them. They said it straight off that we sometimes can't practically give solutions. We can give them theoretically, you know, when we say do this, do that, sounds good, doesn't it? And you know, one fantastic answer, but practically, you know, maybe one person out of 100 could follow what you just said, or you know, applies to them. So really, we need people's real life experiences to be shared. So those people asking about that, they may be asking us on a platform at Guidance Sub, but really we need the answers to come from the community themselves. Like, that's why I'm asking you guys. So I think, Khurram, you know, you should be answering this question. Like, you work, you know, you have a life, you have challenges, you have kids, you know, you got a spouse, you got parents, you know. How do you balance everything?
It is very difficult. I think that's something you have to acknowledge. With kids especially, it take a lot of time, spouses and other family and things.
Are they watching at home today?
No, they're asleep. They should be by now anyway. My kids are still very young. So the thing that you can read as many books on productivity as you want, or look at accounts on Instagram, but if you want to do more, you have to wake up earlier.
Yeah,
and I think that's something I learned after having kids, where you don't have a choice but to wake up earlier. And you do get a lot more done, because you know, you need your equal time with your kids and then with your deen as well. But if you're working 9 to 5, it's never really 9 to 5. It's about 7:30 till about 7 p.m. Realistically, you have to get ready and traveling and things like that. So that's the majority of your waking day. So you need to wake up earlier, get things done whilst everyone's asleep. And Islam obviously gives us a good structure to do that. But you'll find the common theme is all the CEOs who wake up at 2 a.m. and it's just the same as waking up for Tahajjud, isn't it?
No, you're right.
Exactly the same thing.
Books, you all probably read the books where
they wake up early.
The more successful a person is, they'll say this show. The less TV they watch, less time they spend on social media, the earlier they wake up. It's just,
so if you have the structure, and Islam gives you the structure, and you listen, all these, it's good to read these people who are motivating, and if you can't do it, then you have to look into what is distracting you, I think, and usually social media or binging on Netflix and these kind of things.
I'm going to be more specific. You know, you started this journey. You're here on the podcast. Mashallah, Mubarak. Maybe you know, you're here, mashallah. So how did you get? Because I'm not saying you got a perfect life or anything. What I'm trying to say is you found a balance to some degree.
Yeah.
What are the steps that you, or the phases or the challenges you went through to find that balance? You know, what difficulties did you find, or what helped you change? You know, can you be more specific?
Same difficulties as everyone. You know, you get to the end of your day about 7 p.m, have your dinner, and then before you know it, you've wasted 2 or 3 hours watching TV, and then it's bedtime again. I think I came to Guidance when I was 32, so very late in the day for someone who.
So you didn't wake up early, yeah?
No, not at all. No. So, but I lost my job and was left with a gap of thinking, well, I really do need to start looking into some sort of course or something. And the year before, I'd looked into it, but never really went ahead with it. So in a way, it was a blessing to have nothing to do for a few months anyway. And I came across Guidance Hub, and it was 9:30 in the morning on a Saturday. So without I had one child then, but not two. And it's very difficult to think, well, it's 4 hours and it's going to take me this long, and you know, I might do it online, which is easily accessible, but also an excuse nowadays as well to stay at home. But I gave it a go and came to Taste Today to check it out first, and I was impressed. And it's been 2 years since, from year 1 and year 2. And once you get started, you do end up falling into a good structure. For me, the Saturdays used to be something to look forward to, almost like a reset for the week. If you've not had the best week in terms of your deen, to come in on Saturday, learn some more, and obviously have the structure. So it does help. But I think if you do struggle with time management, just look at your distractions. And if you put your phone away or hide it, or it breaks or something, you'll have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
or if your TV doesn't work, you know, something like that. So you should look at yourself a little bit as well. I know people say the world is fast paced, but you do have to take some responsibility as well.
So then, how did you? Because when I came to GH, it was before it was
So
called
GH,
Guidance
by
Hub.
GH you mean Guidance Hub,
Guidance
yeah.
Hub, right? So before it was called Guidance Hub, it was called Al Huda.
Yeah,
right?
we had a
Al-Huda
different name.
courses.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Courses. Yeah, we just were doing the courses back then. Yeah,
back then, and that was when I did the courses, right? And I just finished uni. That was when I did it. So I'd finished uni. And
so you did wake up a bit early then. Uni's a good time to wake up.
Yeah, it was a good time to wake up. And but the thing is, once I came to the courses, hang fire Karim just for a second, right? So because I was coming on the Saturday, and Shaykh would give us a class on something. I'd be like, oh, that's another 3 pages of stuff that I don't do, right? And then I'd come back the next week, and then I get 3 more pages from another teacher. I'm like, oh no, I haven't applied any of last week's stuff, and I've got new stuff to apply. Right? And I found that really difficult, and went through 2 years of that pretty much. And then so that was the thing that I found, that it's not just the knowledge, right? It's the application of the knowledge that's crucial and is the most difficult thing to do. How did you feel?
I would say you don't have to be an expert straight away. Just if it's a foundation course, just take your time with it, take each thing. And then as we did at university, you have to revise. And even it's not too strenuous year one, I would say. You maybe a couple of hours after the class or throughout the week, if you just read through what you've read and the next page for the next week, it does help. And just act on each point instead of trying to take so much in. Just like we used to do at uni and kind of revision and studying. I found there's a reading list that you guys give as well, which is very helpful. If you do have to, I didn't have a job, so I had a lot of time at that time. But that's always good to read.
You want to plug your reading book?
Islamic Book Box on Instagram. If anyone wants to follow.
Islamic Book Box, follow.
Them
there, tell them a bit about what you do.
So when I was here, I like reading, but I found that men, especially Muslim men of our age, don't really like reading anymore. It's all podcasts, and obviously it's a good thing, and audio books and PDFs and things. So I've set up this kind of book subscription service where you sign up and you get a Islamic book every month. So it's good to read and challenge yourself.
Handle again
at Islamic Book Box.
Please do check Khurram out and what he has to offer. I think I myself had an injury. That's why I got a stick here. It's not for the show. It's for me to walk on. Like got a nice stick today, or a walking stick. But during the last few months, for me, like from end of Ramadan till now, even I've had lots of time to read, and I got to say, I found like a joy in reading now. Like I always love reading, and I love books, but when you get to do it more and more and more, you kind of binge a bit as well, and that's not good sometimes, because I was reading some fiction as well, and some English, some Arabic, and different topics. Like I was reading a lot of Aqidah books, the theology, and then I got a bit sick of that. I was too much Aqidah. Right? Move on, philosophy, Aqidah. Then I went to a little bit of fake. Then I was like, you know what? Let's see what Amazon's saying. And I went on Amazon what the most liked books are, or reviewed and rated, and they were all science fiction and romance is big, by the way. I think the ladies probably know that. They're the ones that read the romance novels and stuff. So I ended up buying a few like science fiction ones, and
not the romance ones.
No, I didn't want to do that because there's so many of them, and they're repetitive, and same old story, heartbreak, whatever. But the science fiction ones are a different kind of thing and stuff. The one I actually have recommended as well is called the Hail Mary Project, by Andy Weir. He wrote The Martian, which was made into a movie.
The film.
He wrote a book on that. That's what the movie is. And then he wrote another book now called the Hail Mary Project, which is about space travel and stuff. I don't think you learn any life lessons from it. I don't think I did too many things, but it was a nice read. It was actually good stuff, and I enjoyed it. And so again, reading is good, but more importantly, I think Khurram said that our parents may have read a bit here and there. My dad did read a lot, but I think that is a big tool. I mean, the first word revealed was Iqra, like read. So I think reading and what to read. We recommend reading list to our students when they come here. We can probably share that online for everyone to have a look at. Because like you said, there's so much information. Where do you go, right? So we've kind of taken that into mind and thought, right, there's probably 1,000, let's say 100 books you could probably read, or maybe more. Let's just give about
a
10.
taster.
There's about 10. Taste, exactly. But relevant information to you. It's about the Prophet ﷺ, about Islamic history, let's say, about the our practices, fiqh, but not just fiqh, a bit more, explanation about things. So it's basic stuff. It's good stuff that helps you build your connection to the faith. And just like you read a book and you get connected to science fiction and Star Wars and, all these kind of Harry Potter probably and stuff. Reading
like
about
Harry
Islam attaches you to that concept. So I think it's important to read as well.
Yeah.
But guess what, guys? We're going to zoom out, I think, and go to our... we had a metamorphosis here, I think, in the studio.
Science fiction in real life.
Who's here?
Somebody else is here. It looks a bit different to Quran. We've got brother Hassan has joined us. So Hassan, what are you reading right now?
What am I reading? So to be fair, recently I've had my studies. I've actually been doing a lot of accountancy reading, so I'm quite caught up in my studies and that. So I've actually been reading quite a lot, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Maybe not books. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're doing accounting, as in studying for accounting, whilst working,
Yes,
whilst having a family,
yes,
right, and being a Muslim here in the UK. How are you managing all that?
To be honest, it's been quite difficult. I think, like Brother Kuram said, is finding that balance. But I feel like, every stage of life, you have to rebalance all the time because before you get married, you've got so much free time. Then you get married. And then when you have kids, it's constantly finding that balance.
Yeah.
And like I said, you don't get time to sit down. For me, it was literally, I'd wake up in the morning, sort my little one out, go gym, work. And then in the evening, see my little one and then go study. In the evening, that's all that my life was for the past like 6-7 weeks. I just think it's something that you've got to understand what you want to get done in life, your priorities, and then again, it's a case of you got to find that balance between your deen and what we're here for as well. And then obviously, like Shaykh said, we're in a pandemic, we're in a crisis. We got to work, so we got to find ways to obviously progress in this life, but at the same time, we've got to find that balance with the deen. And again, it comes down to you got to make sure that you're not wasting time. None of this binge watching TV. Sometimes after work you're shattered, you just want to go for a nap. And naps can turn into an hour, sometimes. So is cutting that out?
What in all of that, you've given quite a few things there, but what was like, we because what I want viewers to benefit from, maybe I'll start the same question really, is we all are sitting here talking as though we've done it and we're here, but what was the turning point? What helped you do all of this? Was it just self-will and determination that everyone needs to have, or was there support? Was there a particular event? Did you go and hear something? Did something inspire you? How did it come together, basically? Can you pinpoint something for our viewers?
In terms of a specific event, in terms of what's helped me sort of change my life around, in terms of when we've all got past whatever, but then there's certain things that you see and you go through in life. I think when I moved here to Manchester, that's when I really turned my life around, because I was able to become. I'm from a small town. I think we've discussed in a previous podcast before, but where I was from, there's no Muslims there, so I had to change to fit in there. But when I come here, I was like, wow, there's Muslims here practicing. They're praying outside in the parks, openly. They're not scared to pray, and that's what really helped me fit in. And then I changed my life around in terms of I was allowed to be me. I could become myself, alhamdulillah. And then when I started the classes at Guidance Hub, obviously seeking that knowledge, but at the same time, I knew I had to focus on my career as well, because I've always been like career driven. Not that I'm motivated, but everyone has a bit of, we all want to make a good life.
In life.
Yeah. And for me, it's always a case of,
and Islam encourages that, by the way. We should all have a profession and work hard.
And as for me, it's like if I can, in my early years, blast out and get really far in my career, really far ahead, then maybe I won't have them issues later on in life. Don't have to worry, and then I can spend more time with my kids. I want to build a good sort of like family. And it's actually a point that you guys were talking about before. So we're talking about how to raise kids, and then you're talking about discipline and stuff like that. For me now, so obviously my little one started nursery last week. Now, talking about money issues, my wife has to go to work as well. So now both of us are working, both the parents. So our little one, it's hard to ask the grandparents, can you look after them 5 days a week? So they're going to nurseries that most nurseries are not Islamically orientated. So that initial tarbiyah, how do we, as parents now, I'm asking yourself, Shaykh and Ustadh, where do we go from there?
Quite a few things he said, like, it's difficult, but I'll just take one thing that you mentioned about priorities. Now, Islamically, I would say that, look, we need to have a goal in life.
Mhm.
We need to understand who we are and what we're here for. So forget your job, your career, and everything. First, I think that should be the first question that, as a Muslim, you ask yourself that, look, what are we here for? Why has Allah created us? Now, you take that as your main goal, and that should always be there. That's your main goal. That, look, you need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then everything else should come around it. Now, again, I'd say this thing again, that for me, it's very difficult to stand in his shoes, your shoes, or anyone's shoes, because I'm an imam, and that's my job and my religion at the same time. So
yeah.
it's like difficult for me to tell someone that, look, you need to make religion your priority. But that has to be the case. Like, you can't have an excuse of work or anything. Religion has to be the priority, and everything else has to work around it. Now, I can remember an ayah of the Quran, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Yeah, I think every single Muslim out there, they should ponder upon this ayah and have firm belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the thing that He has promised here will definitely come true in your life. There's people, like I've mentioned in classes before, that there's people working for like more hours than needed. Now, for example, brothers that look, he has to work, his wife has to work, and it's difficult. But sometimes you've got to ask yourself the question that, look, why are we having to work so much? Is it because the lifestyle that we're living? And that is the case most of the time. Now, look, you don't have to go out on a weekend and spend a couple of £100 on shopping. And then if that's your culture, if that's your lifestyle you've made, then obviously during the weekend, you're going to have to work towards it. But then at the same time, try and remember that, look, why are we here for? Yeah? If our priority was to worship Allah, and then we've got into all these things. So sometimes what happens is a person, or just a Muslim, firstly, you get yourself into a hole, and then obviously it's going to be hard. Yeah. So people who are complaining about having to work loads of hours and we don't get time for our religion, firstly, we need to look that, why are you having to work so many hours? Is there no way that you can work less hours, spend more time with your children, spend more time worshipping, but then obviously get through? Now, that's the difficult point. That, look, is that possible for someone?
I mean, we don't know people's situation, and
we don't
where
know
they're coming from. But yeah, no, there's a point you mentioned about the ayah itself, that if you fear Allah, if you have taqwa of Allah, He provide. And I think that is the crucial point there, is that what is our primary objective?
Yeah.
And I think that because we took that journey of full formal Islamic learning, we made our objective Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the religion, the akhirah, helping others on that journey now as well. Although when I initially started, it was just about myself. I'll be very honest. I didn't learn to become a teacher. First few years of my Islamic education, Arabic, Quran, it was like, I just want to learn the Quran, I want to learn the Arabic, I want to learn my practices. But then a few years in, like Ustadh says, it just becomes that became my primary objective in life. Just the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, it's all Allah, but the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the fiqh, the seerah, learning the language of Arabic, because that's what's in the Quran, and that makes your worldview, if you like, that probably is the word for it, right? What you look at this world you're here for is to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as imams, as people of that field, it is harder. I wouldn't say it's like impossible for us to understand the perspective of everybody else, because I was part of that, because I had a formal education, went to university, worked and stuff, and I left all of that, but I didn't aspire to go further in that. Like, I didn't want to make a career out of anything in particular, although I was doing engineering and all this kind of stuff. It never really was.
Well, I didn't know you did engineering.
Yeah. Long story. I gave it up. I didn't go down that route, which alhamdulillah, I thank Allah for. Because I
there's enough engineers.
There probably is, yeah. Probably not enough good ones either. But yeah, no. Point being is, everyone else, yourself being in the chemistry, or is it the pharmaceutical industry, in accountancy, Huram, what industry were you in? Law, mashallah, and we got Umar in the studio in marketing, design, videography, photography, everything, a bit of everything, mashallah. And that's good. All of these are actually brilliant fields to be in, and especially the media stuff. We need more Muslims in professional media and producing high quality content that has a lasting impact. I've heard scholars say that now as well, like big scholars say that as Muslims we need to realize this is the way forward. Before it was books, it was other media. Now it's the social media and these kind of gadgets we got in front of us.
Shout out to all the media professionals. Get in touch if there are any.
Yeah, please, help us. We help. But again, that point that I wanted to make was, you have got to have, like Ustadh says, a real ultimate goal. And if you make your goal the primary goal, these things, guess what? They're going to end. Like even our primary goal isn't fiqh, because fiqh ends when you go to the akhirah. It's finished. There's no rules of worship in Jannah.
Yeah.
It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the goal is Allah, and ultimately returning to our creator. And if you look in the Quran, how many times it says to Allah is your return, and we are inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun wa ilayhi al-masir. There's so many ayat I'm quoting that have a meaning of, to him is the final abode, to him is the end, to him is our return. Allah's reminding us all the time through this book, we're going back to him, because that's the reality for every human being, and us in this podcast and our viewers as Muslims. That is the real view we need to have of life. And within that, you can be an imam, you can be an accountant, you can be work in a pharmaceutical company, you could be a solicitor, you could be anything, provide any service to humanity or any job. Obviously, again, Islam will tell you what you can and can't do. You have some issues in your job. I've heard with the drugs you're spreading, you're selling, pharmaceutical drugs, not like the drugs that make people go high. I won't give you a company a shout out before you start thinking of that. He's not a traditional pharmacy owner. He works in big companies these days, mashallah. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I was going to say, Shaykh, that it sounded like, so you said you started off your journey firstly for yourself, right, and to better educate yourself as far as the religion was concerned. Then at some point you pivoted and you decided, actually, I need to give something back. I need to teach. There needs to be some element of service within all of this as well, right? And I think, touching on what you said as well, Hassan, on moving from a part of the country that perhaps didn't have as many Muslims, coming to a part of the country that has lots. One of the things I realize is, this is one of the things that you learn when you work in a big company. They talk all about culture and values in a business, commercial kind of sense. And one of the things that we were told in our company is, because it's quite a small company, is that because there's not many of you, you all contribute quite a lot to that culture. We as Muslims here contribute a lot to the type of British Muslim culture. And so when we talk, we think about service, and if there isn't teachers, if there isn't people giving their time, then you can't have these type of things. You can't have courses, you can't have classes, you can't have a functioning British Muslim society. So then how did you come to that kind of conclusion that actually it's more than just about me? There's something else here.
I think what you said there, I'm going to mention another point as well, is not just the Islamic side, is the work side as well. Like, you go into work, you're a Muslim, and you're impacting your boss. I don't mean you're going to make them into Muslims. No, they're going to adapt to having a Muslim, a Jewish person, a Christian, a Hindu on site, and they're going to respect everybody. That's the society we live in. It's a it's a very diverse, multicultural, multifaceted kind of place. But that's the thing we have to represent. And how do you represent if you haven't learn your own culture, religion, whatever it is you want to bring to that workspace, or university, whatever, you might have to go on a trip with your work colleagues or something, right? And how are you going to behave on that trip? You've got to be a Muslim. You've got to pray your 5 daily prayers. You've got to uphold certain values and du'as, and they're going to see you pray. Now that's what is really important. That's probably more important than my job, because although I provide the education, and one of the people, is really the impact he has in society after you've received the education that matters. So even if I taught all day and night and nobody actually practiced it, what is it worth? And I'll get the rewards, inshallah. But it's really about the practice, which I've realized, why Ustadh and I keep on saying, we don't go and work with a lot of non-Muslims. We do every now and then, but to be honest, most of our interactions are with Muslims. But for you, Khiza, you spend a whole chunk of your day, Hassan as well, these days online, and I know because we're all on this same, but you do go into work as well, and there's a lot of non-Muslims with different beliefs, ideas, and whatever, but you have a good relationship with them. They're your colleagues, and you respect them, and they respect you, and you have a good relationship and build a positive kind of future together to some degree, right? And we have to be a representative of who we are in a positive way. And I think that learning the faith and you know, being around teachers initially, and then taking that experience to your life, to your home, to your children, is the solution. You know, is the one of the pivotal ways of moving forwards. And I think when people ask these questions, do we have any questions?
We have.
And if you do have any comments or anything, please.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's not been shared with us yet, but anything coming through? Yes, or Khiz is going to tell us.
so we've got a question. How does one manage being a parent of teenagers, so college age children in the UK? Right. So I've got 2 kids, as you know,
Okay, yeah.
5 and 2 years old, Ismail and Suleiman. Ismail,
Mashallah.
if you're still
watching-
awake, go to bed. Right, it's
Mashallah.
bedtime. But the one thing the advice that I've been given by people whose children have grown up is that small children, small problems, big children or older children, bigger problems,
correct.
right? And so I'm not looking forward to that challenge, right, of raising children, older children in this country. That's going to be difficult. You know, have you got anything to say on that subject?
I think I'll hand over to Ustadh on this one. You know, it's something
I mean,
that we asked a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm,
Like you said, small problem. If you can have a solution for it, then it doesn't get to a big problem. There's
Okay.
so many, alhamdulillah, there's so many youngsters, teenagers in our society who are on the right path, who are practicing, and not just practicing, but they're well mannered as well. They've got the morals, everything. Now, if you think that, look, they're not coming from the blue or something, they're not coming from another country. They've actually grown up here. They've gone to probably the same schools, and probably not the best schools as well. But there's obviously been something from the parenting side which has kept them separate and kept them like influenced from home rather than being influenced from school. So I think the main thing is that if you can nurture and parent the kids when they are at that young age, I'm sure definitely they will go the way that you want.
Prevention
And
before cure. as we
yeah,
say. I think
definitely.
if, you know, the earlier you start,
yes.
the better. You know, don't feel like you're imposing on your children. It's your duty. I think this is a balance we have to have. A lot of times parents, I've looked for the kids actually, say it's too early for them to do certain things. We don't want to force their religion on them. We don't want to do this, we don't do that. And then as time goes by, the years fly. Trust me, you know, my son's 14, daughter's 11. And I'm thinking I should have done more with them. Should have done this earlier. You know, just get it done basically. Don't be shy. Because you're a Muslim, you want you know where your children are going to be when they grow up. Give them, you know, maybe I'm a bit more capable, but give them explanations as well. You know, don't just say do this and do that. Don't command them and boss them around. Especially the question about teenagers. The people who hate being bossed the most of anybody in the world is teenagers. So you got to be wiser. You know, you got to be more careful and you know, understand how, you know, befriend them. The Prophet's advice, or the advice in Islamic values, is befriend them at that age. You know, when they're 40, they're young adults, they can think for themselves. They could possibly go and live by themselves. I mean, university they do go, right? So at that age they need independence and they think for themselves. They got the ability to, you know, do a lot of things on their own, and if they get a job or something, then they are quite independent. That doesn't mean they're going to break away, and you know, if you've taught them well, they will always respect you and give money home and, you know, everything. But I want to finish from my side, because I think we're coming to the end of the podcast. Our time is go back to what Hassan was saying earlier, and maybe bring him in on this as well. And Khurram was saying a bit as well, was that, you know, they learned the deen and they've got a job. So, you know, you mentioned that, you know, your career, you've got family, and you've got sort of your religious education, or, you know, practices, worship, etc. And it reminds me of the Sahaba, you know, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. We, unfortunately, the misconception is they were just Muslims. They're perfect Muslims that never did anything else apart from being Muslim, which is the truth. But what does that mean? It means they were fathers, mothers, you know, carpenters, business people, you know, builders, and, you know, whatever. They were doing jobs, you know, like we do jobs today. The society there, it was a civilization. It was a city. It wasn't like nomadic. Medina was a city. It wasn't just a, you know, desert like people have this image of a desert with tents in. It was actually a city with civilization. People would come to the city. The Prophet even called it the Hadir, right? The Hadira, the city civilization. So they were doing things. They were literally, you know, what we do today, living a normal life. In that particular time and era, yes, but it was normal. It wasn't like we say work, religion, and family. It was all one. They had the balance, if you like. They knew what to do. They went to work. They came home. they had family, they did their worship at night, and they were obviously the best. And we might say, oh, they were easy for them. No, they're an example for us, you see. And we said earlier, reading and learning about the lives of other examples. And Ustadh was saying, like, you've got to get practical examples of people like yourselves and others, inshallah. If we get ladies onto the podcast, it'd be nice, for them to speak about their issues and how those that have, been through these challenges and are confident female Muslims today in society. It'd be really nice to have that conversation from them rather than men talk on their behalf.
Yes.
Which is often what happens on a lot of podcasts. And, we're kind of avoiding that deliberately, I think, because we want to be genuine from our own experiences. I think that's the best way forward. But that's one thing I would recommend everyone, that you've got to look at the lives of Muslims from before. And not just the Sahaba, you can start from the Sahaba, but you've got people in every era that were amazing. Women as well, business women, physicians, scholars. You look at it, the women were involved in society. But because we always have this principle of, having this dignity and respect for women, you don't get as much details. We don't go and shout about them and talk about them. Mention their names as often as we should, but because there's that general respect for a woman, she's somebody's sister, mother, etc., which is beautiful, to be honest. But it shouldn't stop us from having them as examples, as role models, for others. We had a book launch of the exemplars for our times. I think you came to that, Hiza?
No, missed that one.
Anybody attend that? Allah forgive you all for that. But it was a beautiful event with Michael Sugic and Peter Sanders, the author and photographer, and they put a beautiful set of books together. And they actually had a female in there, and they said this is one of we couldn't find much about her, and it was a mission. It was like such difficult time getting the details and permission to use some of the photos, even which is a very sensitive topic as well, But we need that today to represent the female folk and to give them inspiration. So I'm sure most of our comments and things that are coming in were maybe from the lady folk. Allah bless them and give them strength. So we need to, show them there is a whole array of Muslims living in all over the world, even including the UK. We had Muslims from 100 years ago that were here, females, males, living as Muslims in the UK before cultures came over. I'm talking about homegrown Muslims of the UK itself, and they lived a life. They participated in society. They had jobs. They were whatever was going on at the time, and we need to kind of revive that as well. Like get people to see that Islam isn't just me now in 21st century. It's a tradition that I'm a part of. Yeah,
I think that's a good place to end today's chat, and a good place to perhaps pick up the next video cast or podcast. Should this be called a podcast or a video cast?
Yeah.
Podcast. It's a podcast, right? So the person who sent me a message and said this isn't a podcast, it's a video cast. It is a podcast. But that's, I think, a good place to end today and to pick up next week. Thank you, Shaykh Waseem. Thank you, Ustadh Hamdani. Thank you, Hassan, and thank you, Khurram, and of course Umar behind the scenes, who we will one day. We'll wrangle him onto this sofa. Thank you, everybody at home, for sticking with us. Thank you for all your comments and questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to speak to all of them and mention them all, but we will try and incorporate them as part of future kind of conversations that we do have. Jazakallah, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.